from the drama-free true crime destination, where we supercharge the storytelling, amplify the facts, and deliver the hard-hitting definitive truth you won't get anywhere else. This is Bethea's Byte, and it's reloaded. Five cases, 5 states, and I'm covering them all. I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. This is Bethea's Byte, and it's reloaded. A man in Minnesota is accused of crushing his co-worker's head when using the shadows cast down on the street. He tried to make a machine look like it was grabbing the victim, according to police in the North Star State. 34-year-old Christopher Crimmins has been charged with second-degree manslaughter in the death of 26-year-old Tyler Anthony Lynch, according to a criminal complaint reviewed by Law and Crime. On Thursday, Crimmins and Lynch were in Apple Valley, Minnesota, trimming trees in the area, according to the charging document. The city is just south of Minneapolis. They were working for a few hours with a boom on their work truck, which lifts, lowers, and moves heavy loads. Crimmins said he was on top of the boom while Lynch was on the ground cleaning up branches, according to the complaint. The defendant allegedly told police the men were effing around. At one point, Crimmins saw the sunlight was casting shadows of both the grapple and of the victim on the street. He moved the hydraulic grapple while looking at the shadows to make it appear as though the shadow of the hydraulic grapple was grabbing the shadow of the victim. According to the court document, Crimmins was not looking at the victim nor the grapple and did not see that the grapple was moving toward the victim's head. He then allegedly closed the grapple and crushed Lynch's head. A witness reportedly said they saw the grapple come toward the victim and either hit or pinch the victim's head, causing significant injury and trauma to his head. Officers with the Apple Valley Police Department responded to the scene and found Lynch on the ground with a significant amount of blood around him and significant trauma to his head. He was pronounced dead. There was blood on the grapple that was directly above the victim, according to the complaint. Crimmins was arrested and booked into the Dakota County Jail. His bail was set at $40,000 without conditions. His next court appearance is set for September 10th. A North Carolina woman will spend the rest of her life behind bars for killing her toddler daughter by hitting her upward of 40 times. On Friday, 33-year-old Jeannie Cassandra Ditty was found guilty by a jury of her peers in Cumberland County on 1 count each of murder in the first degree and felonious child abuse over the death of 2-year-old Macy Grace Ditty, according to the press release issued by the North Carolina Conference of District Attorneys. In quick fashion, Special Superior Court Judge J. Stanley Carmichael sentenced the defendant to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder charge. The judge also imposed a sentence of 157 to 201 months in prison for the child abuse charge. The investigation began in December 2015 when paramedics brought the victim to Cape Fear Valley Regional Medical Center, according to a contemporaneous report by Raleigh-based NBC affiliate WRAL. The child was unresponsive when she arrived at the hospital, according to police. Medical staff found bruises all over her body, and a preliminary investigation suggested her injuries were consistent with child abuse. Once they determined that the child had severe injuries, they actually had to move the child to UNC Chapel Hills Hospital. And there they discovered that the injuries were very serious, and the child died within a couple of days, according to Fayetteville Police Department spokesperson Lieutenant David McLaren. Macy died at the hospital 2 days later. A CT scan revealed non-survivable brain injuries sustained within the prior 8 to 24 hours, a period during which the defendant was the sole caregiver with access to the child, according to the press release. At the time, both Ditty and Macy's father were active duty service members in the U.S. Army. While she was in the hospital, the child's father was called back from overseas to make the decision about whether to take her off life support, according to the Fayetteville Observer. CBS News reported 1 month after the child died, the defendant contacted Pennsylvania-based photographer Sonny Joe and requested afterlife photos of herself and the toddler. Joe later told WRAL, "She told me her daughter had passed away by choking on a banana, and that choking her gave her seizures, which made her lose oxygen to the brain, and then she passed away." The photographer passed that information on to law enforcement. On March 23, 2016, the North Carolina Office of the Chief Medical Examiner determined the child's death was a homicide. Once we saw that report, it indicated that the child had not died of natural causes. That's coming from District Attorney Billy West to WRAL. The cause of death was listed as homicide, and we proceeded with warrants. On March 24th, Diddy turned herself in. At the time, 42-year-old Zachary Earl Kiefer, the defendant's then-boyfriend, was charged alongside Diddy. All the charges against him were dismissed in November 2020. However, when investigators determined he was not present at the time, the injuries were inflicted on the little girl. The case initially went to trial in 2020, but ended with a hung jury voting 10-2 in favor of the defendant's guilt. WRAL reported the jury selection for the second trial began earlier this month. During a multi-week trial, 16 witnesses testified. At trial, the state forensic pathologist testified that Macy suffered at least 40 separate physical blows, according to the press release. Jurors found Diddy guilty after less than 3 hours of deliberations. Special Prosecutor Lisa Coltrane said in a statement, "Macy was a precious toddler who was loved by so many people. They carried the grief of losing Macy while always continuing to fight for her story to be told and justice to be served. And though it was a long road, it finally reached a conclusion." A Kentucky man unleashed a brutal attack on a pregnant woman carrying twins, resulting in a ruptured placenta, liver laceration, and an emergency C-section, according to police. 31-year-old Desmond Potts allegedly dragged the pregnant victim back inside the Louisville home where the beatdown unfolded as she tried to escape, according to court documents obtained by local NBC affiliate WAVE. He grabbed a knife at one point and threatened to kill the victim and her unborn children, while also attacking a 9-year-old child who tried to intervene. The court documents say Potts and the victim were arguing at the residence on Thursday when Potts began shoving his forehead into the woman's forehead. He allegedly grabbed the victim and slammed her onto a couch, which led the 9-year-old jumping on Potts' back in an attempt to stop him. Potts snatched the child by his neck and pinned the boy against the wall, according to court documents. After pulling the victim back inside, Potts held the knife to her stomach and threatened to kill her children, according to the documents. He allegedly dragged the woman around the home and slammed her onto the floor before bringing her back outside, where he dragged her down a flight of stairs before going after the 9-year-old again. Police say Potts grabbed the boy by the back of the neck after he showed up with another child and jumped on Potts' back again. The boy was allegedly pinned against another wall. A neighbor heard the commotion and called police. The victim fainted and was rushed to the hospital after officers arrived. Doctors reported multiple injuries that led to the emergency C-section, including a serious liver laceration and the ruptured placenta. The 9-year-old also reported having neck pain, according to WAVE. Potts was arrested Friday and charged with first-degree assault, domestic violence, first-degree unlawful imprisonment, first-degree wanton endangerment, fourth-degree assault, child abuse, third-degree terroristic threatening, and menacing. He is due for a preliminary hearing on August 31st. The condition of the woman and her twins is unknown. 19-year-old Carmelo Anthony was convicted of murder in the death of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf, who was killed at a track meet. Anthony never denied stabbing the victim, but had argued at trial that he was acting in self-defense. The two teens started arguing at the track meet in April 2025 because Anthony was standing under the tent from Metcalf's school, which the defendant did not attend. While Anthony's appellate attorney successfully had trial judge John Roach recused from the case, they could not convince Judge Michael Chitty to reverse the jury's decision. Anthony's defense had argued in its motion for a new trial that Roach had violated the defendant's right to a fair and open trial by limiting media and public access to the courtroom. The motion also alleged that prosecutors violated a gentleman's agreement in which both sides had agreed not to introduce any character evidence for either the defendant or the victim. Mike Howard, who served as Anthony's lead defense attorney at his trial, testified at the hearing on the motion for a new trial, saying he had assumed the agreement with prosecutors covered a scenario in which his client took the stand, according to local station WFAA. Howard recalled prosecutor Bill Werski approaching him during a break on the first day of trial to tell him that their deal would not cover a testifying defendant, leaving Howard absolutely shocked. Werski argued that he believed the agreement had been violated by Howard's mention of Anthony's participation in his school's chess club. While Roach disagreed with Werski's assessment, the judge admitted that there was no way to legally enforce the off-the-books agreement. The testimony wasn't enough to sway the judge. Upon the motion, the record, the evidence and argument, the briefs, and the relevant case law, the court has determined that the motion should be denied, Chitty wrote in his order. We respect and expected the court's decision denying the motion for a new trial, Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis said in a statement to CBS News. The jury's guilty verdict stands, and we remain confident in the process. Every defendant has the right to appeal. Our thoughts and prayers remain with the Metcalf family in the painful wake of last week's hearing. One of Anthony's attorneys, Russell Wilson, told CBS News, "We respectfully disagree with the ruling and remain firmly committed to protecting our client's rights. We believe the issues raised in our motion are substantial and deserve meaningful appellate review. The denial of our motion does not end this case. We will continue the appeal in the Fifth Court of Appeals and pursue every legal remedy available to our client." A judge has found a Florida woman competent to stand trial despite her repeated insistence that a deadly shooting that killed a sheriff's deputy was the result of spiritual possession. 60-year-old Julie Sulpizio has pleaded not guilty to murder of a law enforcement officer, attempted murder, and battery after a shootout killed Master Deputy Bradley Michael Link and left Sulpizio's own family dead. A state mental hospital reported twice that it had restored Sulpizio to competency after her arrest in August 2024, but her defense attorneys challenged that assessment, arguing that the defendant continues to believe that she and those around her are possessed by spirits and demons. Investigators said that on August 2, 2024, Sulpizio was assaulting her neighbors while ranting about religion. Detectives said they later determined that Sulpizio, her husband, and their adult daughters were actually trying to lure the neighbors into their own home to kill them. A shootout after deputies arrived killed Link. Sulpizio's husband and daughters were found inside their own home with self-inflicted gunshot wounds. At a competency hearing in June, two doctors hired by the defense testified that they disagreed with the state's hospital's determination that the defendant was competent. One expert, Dr. Julie Harper, testified that the defendant experiences delusions involving other personalities referred to as alters, often associated with religious figures such as Lucifer, the Archangel Michael, a figure called Malcolm, who may also be an archangel, and Helen, whom she identifies as God's wife. Defendant believes she is sometimes possessed by these figures and that they possess others as well. The second defense expert, Dr. Jens Castillo, said that Sulpizio believes that Lucifer or Archangel Michael could possess a judge, prosecutor, or defense counsel. Judge Brian Welke ultimately sided with the state expert, Dr. Jason Demery, who conceded that Sulpizio's beliefs about demons are not delusions, but rather a cultural phenomenon in Christianity that becomes especially pronounced. Demery also dismissed the argument that the voices Sulpizio claims to hear are hallucinations, arguing instead that the voices are how she relates to her dead family. Welke said that part of this decision rested on the defendant's behavior during the June hearing. The court observed that throughout the 7-hour hearing, the defendant appeared to be attentive and able to follow proceedings. Defendant sat stoically. She did not make any outbursts or otherwise display behavior that would interfere with trial proceedings. Welke wrote this in his order, finding Sulpizio competent. Defendant was able to manifest appropriate courtroom behavior, and nothing suggested she would not be able to do so at trial. Sulpizio is scheduled to return to court in October for a plea negotiation conference. Thank you so much for joining me here at the drama-free true crime destination. Please be sure to follow Bethea's Byte Reloaded all over social media and support the channel through PayPal and Cash App. You can get your true crime news right here with no gimmicks, no drama, and no BS. This is Bethea's Byte, and it's reloaded.